Welcome. In this video we'll be taking a quick look at Fahrenheit, a legendary grade tank class Elune. At 6 stars, max level 60, he starts off with a very high 54.8k HP, 2.8k attack, and a very nice 6.1k PDEF and 5.9k MDEF. His attack speed at 105 does put him a little bit in the mid-range, the lower end of the mid-range, which isn't absolutely that desirable for him, as slower isn't always too bad for him. As he progresses up through the Transcendence up to a max of +5, he goes up to a whopping 98.7k HP base. His attack is still at 5k, with his PDEF at 11.1 and MDEF at 10.7k. Very high indeed. Moving to his skills, his normal skill, Heavy Punishment, is a frontline single hit attack dealing physical damage equal to 60 plus 90% of his attack. As this skill gets leveled up, it goes up to a 540 plus 123% of his attack. With his attack being low base, this skill is not going to do a lot of damage. Moving to his special skill, Sacred Shield. This skill only consumes 2 souls and is a buff to himself, which makes it very spammable and able to keep the buff if it does get stripped. This skill gains an enhanced buff that increases his physical and magic defense by 1000 plus 10% of his max HP for 2 turns, and provides a barrier that absorbs 10% of his max HP from all damage except soul damage. As this skill gets leveled up to the max, at level 6 it goes up to a 3000 plus 20% of his max HP for 3 turns, and the barrier still is at 10% of his HP. This increases his physical and magic defense dramatically and makes him a very good tank, as he is very beefy and hard to kill. When you go to the ultimate skill, his Sacrificial Barrier, this skill is an enhanced buff that reduces damage received by 30% for 2 turns to all allies, and then puts a soul effect on him that allows him to absorb 100% of the damage that the allies receive onto himself. This means, though, that if the allies do take damage from an AoE attack, everything that would have damaged them instead goes into him, making him take all of the damage from an AoE attack, which can knock him down significantly. Also, the damage is based on their defenses, not his, so while you can do more damage to Fahrenheit if you're fighting him on an enemy team, you can target the other allies on his team to deal more damage to him. If he does have a shield, the damage that he does take through Sacrificial Barrier will reduce the shield first. It is not soul damage, it is whatever damage you're applying to the enemy, be it magical or physical. As this skill is leveled up to 6, this goes up to a 50% reduction in damage for 3 turns for all of your allies. This allows them to take less damage while giving him all of that damage. For squishy allies, though, still targeting them can still usually be more beneficial, as Fahrenheit's stats, if he is buffed, is typically very high. So targeting an enemy one can reduce his HP even more. Another thing to note about Sacrificial Barrier, if you are fighting him on a defense team and you wish to kill him, and they have a Weiwei on the team with the Weiwei buff that increases Fahrenheit's defenses by a lot and also heals him by a significant amount when he is hit, if he does have Sacrificial Barrier up on his team, you can attack the other members of his team. Then Weiwei's buff will heal the member that you attack. Even though Fahrenheit takes the damage, he will not get the heal from the Weiwei buff. This allows you to take down the HP of the Fahrenheit while attacking another one, using the Sacrificial Barrier against him. Going into his first passive, this passive is an effect that does a physical effect that provokes on all enemies with a 10% or higher attack speed than Fahrenheit's at the beginning of the match. This is a nice provoke that lasts for 2 turns and is good if you're fighting teams with high speed. So having speed on Fahrenheit isn't always desirable, as you want to have him slow to make sure that he can get the provoke on as much as possible. This also means that you're going to want to have him on high accuracy so that he can land those provokes. The second passive that he has, when his HP goes below 25%, he gains a barrier that absorbs 25% of his max HP from all damage except soul damage. This can only be activated once per battle and is when he drops below 25% of his HP. Something to note about this too is that you want to be careful with using him in a boss fight, as some bosses will gain soul damage or gain an instant turn dealing soul damage to your entire team if there's a barrier, which means if they take him down low enough with damage, then it triggers his barrier. That boss will instantly get a turn dealing AoE soul damage to your entire team, which can kill your team. So either make sure you keep him healed so his barrier doesn't apply, but you would also have to not use his special skill during that time too, as it also creates a barrier. So he's not exactly the best tank to use in all situations, especially that boss in particular, but so it is something to note. His third passive, Valiant Resistance, this one uses the power of Calamity to require great strength as more damage is taken. Basically, this one reduces the damage received by 5% until the character's next turn after receiving damage from a direct attack. This can be reduced up to 30%, making it a little bit easier for him to stay tanky, as it reduces the damage that he takes as he takes damage from enemy hits. The damage that he takes will get reduced up to a maximum of 30%. And this is just until his next turn, and then it goes away. Moving on to his skill gem. On his skill 1, the recommended gems are a physical attack, or physical damage, and crit rate. It gives a 5% chance to stun the target for 1 turn. As this skill does very low damage, is only a single target attack, and doesn't do really anything else, going ahead and applying this for that low 5% chance to stun is still somewhat a little bit better than the skill being absolutely useless. At least now, if he attacks with this, you have a 5% chance to stun the enemy. While the stun is a very low chance, it is still better than doing basically nothing. Moving to his special skill, this skill is a yellow violent set, which gives him a 5% chance of becoming immune to weaken effects for 1 turn. This 5% chance is very low, so going with full yellow gems might be a better option, as it'll provide with a better buff to him in terms of his physical and magic defense. On with his ultimate skill, again, the recommended is yellow violent. This one gives him a 10% chance of becoming immune to all damage for 1 turn. While the 10% chance is somewhat low, this is something that can save him and your team, as making him invincible to all damage is something that would be very good, since he will be absorbing all damage from your team. The other thing you can do is the yellow gems, just to give more damage reduction effects to him, but going with the recommended set could be a viable option, adding that extra 10% chance to be immune to all damage. So it is up to you on which way you go on that one. Both options, full yellow or the recommended, are both viable and useful for him. Moving to Dimension Slate, stats that you want to look for him are physical magic defense, his HP, accuracy are good, attack, crit power are not useful for him, nor is attack speed, as attack speed makes him faster, meaning that the enemy would have to be even faster to gain the 10% advantage, so he has the provoke at the beginning of the turn. Evasion is also not a bad stat to have on him, but not one that would be ultimately sought after. But if you have some, the more the better. Accuracy, HP, physical, magic defense are the ones you really want to focus on here, with evasion being secondary. Again, attack speed, crit power, crit rate, and attack are not very useful for Fahrenheit and serve no purpose. Gear sets for Fahrenheit can be several different things. For one, you can go with the newer tank set and have the bonus that it gives, which ignores damage for 2 turns when his HP drops to 50% or lower. This only happens once, but it does provide him with a little bit extra buffer, as his other passive that gives him a barrier once his HP drops below 25% is a secondary thing. If you're lucky, this will give you 2 chances to survive with him, making it a little bit easier for him to heal up. Other sets would be anything that reduces damage, like for example the Forgotten Hero set on him is a good set to put because it reduces damage by 20% if he has a buff, and since his special skill that only requires 2 souls is a buff, he can always have a buff, which means he reduces the damage that he takes by 20% basically all the time, making it even more difficult to kill him. Other sets that you can do for him, of course, is the Ulysses set, as the Ulysses set provides an extra 100% PDEF and MDEF for 2 turns if he is crit on. This is a good set. Also, the full set for Ulysses, if you can do it, is a 50% chance of causing despair on the attacker for 2 turns. 50% chance is a pretty good amount and can cause despair on them, making it more difficult for the enemy team to do damage to you or to be effective. Whichever you choose, make sure you go HP in his offhand slot, as he is a tank. He does not need the attack, and he only has 1 skill that does damage, and that skill does very little damage. So go with an HP on the offhand and try to max out his physical and magic defenses as much as possible. Do not need to go for speed on him, so any other gear that you would normally want to have speed on, you can ignore on him, as having him slow is absolutely fine. He does work well with some team compositions. Any team that needs debuffs on the enemy to help land more skills or to do more damage to them, he can work well for those, as well as going up against fast teams in air battles or guild content. If you're fighting a team that you can see does tend to be on the faster side, going with him can give you a little bit of an edge, as he has a chance to provoke them. But be careful, as a lot of those teams that are fast also run Trent, which gives them a good chance of resisting debuffs, which would mean that you would need a high chance of landing debuffs and very high accuracy on him to make sure that they land. So it is something to be careful about, as a lot of those teams are resistant to debuffs at the very beginning. Plus Trent cleanses, and most of them are tuned to go with Trent first to cleanse any debuffs anyway. And that's going to be it for this one. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below and I will get to them as soon as possible. Thank you.